Reciban
We
un
are
muy
now
cordial saludo
ready.
desde
Welcome,
WWF
everyone.
Mesoamérica.
Good
Muchas gracias
morning.
a todos por su
Greetings
disponibilidad.
from
Antes
WWF
de iniciar,
Mesoamerica.
quisiera mencionar
Thank you all for
algunas
being
reglas de
here
sana
on time.
convivencia.
Before we
Vamos a agradecer
begin,
que
I'd
todos
like to mention
mantengan
a
su
few
micrófono
housekeeping
apagado
rules. Please, everybody, keep your microphones on mute.
mientras los colegas están presentando.
And
Vamos
as
a
we
tener
listen
diferentes
to the
espacios para hacer
presentations,
preguntas
we will
y al
have
final vamos a tener un espacio
time
para
for
un
Q&A
intercambio.
sessions and
Les
a
vamos a
bit of an
agradecer que puedan ir
exchange and
colocando de
conversation
dónde
at the
nos
end of the
acompañan a través del
presentations.
chat
Please, everybody, introduce yourselves on the chat box.
para que nos vayamos conociendo un poco mejor.
And this
Mi
is in
nombre es
order
Irene
for us
Zamora,
to
soy
get to know
oficial
each
de
other
programa
better. My
en
name is Irene
WWF Mesoamérica
Zamora. I'm a program official at WWF.
y quisiera comentarles un poco sobre de dónde
I am
surge este
based in
webinar que
Mexico, and I'd like
tendremos
to
hoy.
tell you a bit about the reasons why we
Este
came up
webinar
with today's
surge del
webinar.
programa de ciudades
This webinar
sostenibles, que es
comes
el
from the
desafío de
framework
ciudades.
of
Muchas de las
sustainable
ciudades que nos
cities, the
acompañan hoy
Cities
ya
Challenge.
forman
A lot
parte
of
de
the
este
cities
desafío de
joining us here
ciudades.
today
Esta
are
es una
already
competencia
subscribed
bianual,
to this challenge. This is a year
el cual
competition
pues lo
that
vemos
we
como un programa
organize,
integral que ayuda al
and it is
cumplimiento
a
del Acuerdo de
comprehensive
París
program
y
that helps
crea
us
pues ciudades
achieve
resilientes mediante
The
acciones
Paris
climáticas
Agreement
integradas y ambiciosas.
disclaimers, and
Actualmente
it helps us achieve the
participan
most
más
ambitious
de
goals.
900
We
ciudades de
currently
70
have
países
190 cities out of 70
y pues
countries
bueno,
participating
este
in the
pues es un
program.
movimiento, ¿verdad? Para
And this
avanzar
is
en la
a
agenda
whole
climática
movement.
global
This is
donde las
in order
ciudades se
to go
inspiran
about the climate
y se
agenda
impulsan
where
mutuamente.
cities have been taking ideas for
Y
sustainability
bueno,
from
hablando un poco
getting
sobre lo que
inspiration
es el
every
webinar
day
de hoy,
on
¿verdad?
what
El
to
cual
do
está
for our
titulado
preservation.
como
And today's
Cambiando
webinar
hábitos,
has a
transformando
title,
ciudades,
Changing
lecciones
Habits,
aprendidas de
Transforming
campañas de
Cities,
cambio de
Lessons Learned
comportamiento.
of Behavior
Este webinar
Changing
tiene como
Campaigns.
objetivo
This
principal
webinar's
compartir
main
lecciones
purpose is to
aprendidas y
share
experiencias
lessons
de ciudades de
learned as well
Guatemala,
as
Honduras y
experiences from
Chile sobre
cities
la
in
integración de
Guatemala,
ciencias
Honduras,
del
and Chile on
comportamiento
the
en el
integration of
diseño de
behavioral
políticas
science
urbanas.
into urban
El evento
policy
se
design.
centrará en
The event
analizar cómo
will
los
focus
instrumentos de
on
política
analyzing
pública
how
pueden
public
fomentar
policy
la
instruments
adopción de
can
hábitos
encourage
sostenibles en
citizens
la
to
ciudadanía,
adopt
tratando
sustainable
tres pilares
habits,
de la agenda
addressing
urbana,
three pillars of the
empezando
urban
por la gestión
agenda:
integral de los residuos y desechos
integrated
sólidos y la
solid waste
transición hacia
management,
modelos de economía
transition
circular.
towards
También
circular
el tema de
economy
movilidad
models,
sostenible con las
sustainable
estrategias de
mobility as well,
desincentivo al uso de
strategies to
vehículo
discourage
particular
private
y
vehicle
promoviendo
use
los modos
and
alternativos.
promote
Y por
alternative
último,
modes.
veremos el tema de
And last
sistemas
but not least,
alimentarios
we will
con
go into
políticas para la
food
mitigación de
systems,
pérdidas y
policies to
desperdicio de
mitigate
alimentos
food
a
loss
nivel
and waste at
municipal
the
y
municipal
regional.
and regional levels.
Cabe mencionar que hoy nos acompañan
We need to
ciudades de todo el
mention that
mundo.
we have here representatives from
Tenemos
cities all around the
traducción
world. We have
del inglés al
simultaneous
español y del
interpretation
español al
available,
inglés.
English, Spanish.
Sin más que agregar, pues empezamos con la
Without
participación de
further
nuestro
ado,
colega
let's
Robin de
begin
León,
with the
quien es
intervention of
oficial
our
de
colleague
comunicaciones
Robin de
para el
Leon,
proyecto Caribe Limpio,
communications
y
officers for
Robin
the
nos presentará
project
el
Clean
marco de
Caribbean.
implementación y los
Robin will be
resultados de la
presenting
campaña de
the
cambio de
implementation
comportamiento en
framework
Honduras
and
y
the
Guatemala con
results
un
of the
enfoque
behavior
técnico
change campaign
en
in
la
Honduras and
gobernanza de
Guatemala
residuos y
with a
desechos
technical
sólidos.
focus on solid
Adelante, Robin.
waste governance. Go ahead,
Muchas
Robin.
gracias, Irene. Buenos días a
Thank you very
todos.
much,
Qué
Irene. Good
gusto
morning,
eh,
everyone. I am
participar con
very
ustedes y
glad
compartir un
to
poquito de lo que hemos
participate in this
trabajado
webinar
como
and share
parte del
with all of
proyecto
you a bit
Caribe
of the
Limpio
work
acá
that
en
we've done
Guatemala y en
in the
Honduras
framework of
y
the
la
project Clean
experiencia que
Caribbean in
tenemos
Guatemala and
en la
Honduras
campaña de cambio
to
de
share the
comportamiento
experiences that we
para
have
la
had
gestión de residuos
with
y
the
desechos
behavior
sólidos. Les voy a
change
agradecer si
campaign
me confirman que
on
pueden ver la
solid
pantalla y si
waste
se ve
management.
correctamente
Could you please
para
confirm that
iniciar
you can see
con
my
la
screen
presentación. Me confirma, Irene,
correctly
si estamos
so that we
perfectos
can
con la
begin with the
presentación
presentation?
Claro
y
que
se
Irene,
sí,
ve.
are we
gracias.
set? Yes, we
Perfecto,
are.
muchísimo gusto.
Thank
Pues
you.
como mencionaba Irene,
Perfect.
soy oficial
Gladly.
de
So
comunicaciones en WWF
as Irene
Mesoamérica.
mentioned, I am a
Justamente hoy, 22 de
communications
abril,
officer
creo que
in
es un día
WWF
importante para mencionar los
Mesoamerica.
esfuerzos que hacemos todos por cuidar la
April
tierra, este
22nd
planeta que
is a
nos
really
alberga a
good
todos, que
day
nos
to
abriga,
mention,
y
to
estos
share
esfuerzos que
all of the
realizamos
efforts that
también desde
we
Mesoamérica y
carry
todas
on
las
about
regiones del mundo que estamos en este
protecting
chat.
the
Mi
land
gente de
that we live
Guatemala, de
on, the
Belice, de
earth that we live
México, de
on. We have
Suecia.
worked with
Un
people
saludo
from
para todos en
Sweden,
este importante
Mexico,
día para
Guatemala,
la
Chile.
conciencia y el cuidado del medio
Greetings,
ambiente. El
everybody,
proyecto Caribe
today
Limpio
in
trabaja
Earth
una
Day.
campaña de
This is a
concienciación para el
project,
cambio de
Clean Caribbean,
comportamiento.
working on a
Y bueno, quiero
behavior
empezar con
change
este
campaign. And
ejercicio.
I
Tenemos
would
en
like to
pantalla
begin
cuatro
with this
imágenes.
exercise.
Les
You
pido
can
en el
see in
chat,
my
por favor,
screen
que me
4 images.
comenten cuál de
Please,
las
on the
cuatro
chat
consideran
box,
ustedes que es
comment
inteligencia
which one
artificial.
of the four
Vamos a
images do you consider was generated by AI? You can tell me either one, 1, 2, 3, 4. That picture was generated via AI. Which one do you believe? We have seen first votes coming in. Number one, just 3 votes, 2, 3. I think 3 and 4 don't have any votes. Which picture do you believe is AI? Actually, number 1 is a real life picture in Honduras, in Northern Atlantic. The AI picture is number 2, contamination on rivers. The purpose of these images is that we take a look at reality, seeing that many times it's even worse than fiction. And that's what we're looking for with our Clean Caribbean project. We are trying to stop these images from existing in real life and only keeping them on a fictitious realm. This is a private-public project, Clean Caribbean, that was implemented to improve solid waste management in Guatemala and Honduras. We have many goals, but the main one is to reduce the leak of solid waste towards the Caribbean Sea between the borders in Guatemala and Honduras, avoiding plastic waste and also protecting the marine ecosystem in the Mesoamerican reef, which is one of the largest ones in the world. So in this program, we have been working in 2 countries, 8 cities. The cities are the city of Guatemala, Hualán, Teculutan, Puerto Barrios, and in Honduras, we've been working with cities San Pedro Sula, El Progreso, Choloma, Puerto Cortes. These 8 cities have been founded or established over 2 very important rivers. You can see Motawan River in Guatemala and Honduras. We have the river Ulua Chamalecon flowing in a similar direction towards the Atlantic and the Caribbean Sea. And this is about disseminating information and preservation data to all communities surrounding these regions. And these projects not only have the purpose of changing behavior, but also establishing circular economy projects with private sector. We have been intervening, trying to establish different kinds of conditions so that we can get extended accountability and responsibility from the private sector, as well as working with local governments. We have working on establishing EPR conditions, and there's a very big focus in this campaign on the change of behavior for people, for citizens. We are trying to change the way that people behave surrounding waste at home, in offices, every moment where waste is generated. And there was a lot of research that was needed. Many times our perception from a desk at some office could be biased. So we decided to do an on-field or on-site investigation and research project. We had the help and support of a private consulting company, an agency. We had to research literature. We had to research the field to see also how the laws are being taken into account. We had to see, for example, on field, how citizens went about following law, following regimes. We also needed to analyze current behavior, what was established as a current behavior. And after all the analysis, we actually came up with a desired behavior, and which could be the motivations and behaviors that we could implement as a campaign to change that behavior as such. So that's what we did. We went on a tour, city by cities. We had to run through it, walk through it. We visited landfills, for example. That is the landfill at Teculutan. That was an area where we saw there was a lot of big opportunities to improve waste management. And we also carried a lot of interviews with citizens. And what we find out is that many of the citizens actually dispose of their waste in a mixed way. They don't separate recyclables, organic waste, or non-recyclable, for example, waste either. Everything was just mixed in a bag. And there was a lot of waste disposal in non-authorized regions. This is a clandestine landfill in the city of Hualán. Many times what we saw were people. See why. And many of the reasons were that a lot of people didn't know how to recycle waste. The waste disposal in non-authorized spaces at certain sites was determined to be something cultural. A lot of people were used to doing that. The tradition was burning waste because they lived in areas where there's a lot of free space, for example, in the yards, and they burn their waste. And other people told us that gathering all of these garbage and waste could be very expensive. So it was a bit more affordable to pay for a significant amount just to someone get rid of said waste. Many times this waste ends up on clandestine or illegal landfills or in water bodies. So they can pay up to $1 to get rid of their waste. What we wanted to do with this campaign is to change behavior, attitude, and incentivize and encourage people to separate, first of all, their waste, that they separate organic, recyclables, non-recyclables, that they are given to recollection systems from the government and also to based groups that already go about the recycling processes and tasks. So as we can see in the picture in the middle, we can see containers, and also on the far right, three different containers to separate waste: recyclables, non-recyclables, and organic waste. That is to begin with a change of behavior. And throughout our tour around cities, we wanted to find out which were some of these barriers affecting the behavior that we wanted to foster or encourage. A lot of people told us that the high cost of bins, of trash containers and trash bags was high, the cost of it. And many people believe that in order to separate residues, you need to buy more bags or even special bins that are a certain color, which could be very expensive, and they don't have that economic viability to buy these containers or different kinds of bags, right? Perhaps they only can afford one trash bag per week. So that limited the behavior. They also told us that they didn't know which residues, which kinds of waste is recycled. So they had to learn at school, but they say that they could have learned that at school, but they don't really remember how it is done. And at different kinds of public spaces, malls, parks, they've seen that there are different trash bins. However, waste is mixed. It's a bit confusing for them to know which waste goes to which bin or container. And of course, there's not enough time. They are very busy. Waste separation could be very complicated. At the end of the day, no one does it. So why should they do it? That also serves as a barrier or a blockage to implement these desired behavior that we're trying to incentivize. So we realize that people are indeed concerned about taking care of the planet and to take care of waste. We asked people, for example, what they did once something glass got broken, for example, at home. They told us that many people actually wraps the broken glass, for example, with newspaper, or they put, a sign for waste collectors to know that that's glass so that they don't get cuts in their hands, because many times due to low budget, they don't have access to, for example, protection gloves. And we also find out that we had to carry on these educational campaigns to inform people about all waste being treated properly by the government, and that, for example, if you separate waste, it is in fact going to be recycled. So many times people don't do the separation of waste because they think that everything just gets mixed up in the garbage truck. However, to let them know that everything goes a different route, a different way, that everything is disposed of properly, hopefully it helps so that they can help us in that first step. We can see here the picture of a river entering Progreso City in Honduras. That's the Ulua River that flows towards the Caribbean Sea. Let's go to the next one. So we had to run a foundation for our behavior change campaign. And we were able to determine that this should be something that goes about really easily. Waste separation should be something that is done in a very simple way. We separate between organics, recyclables, and non-recyclables. We also use certain elements where we give the population options on what to do. We give them a false dichotomy. So we put the citizen in under two scenarios. Do you wish to continue living with nearby a contaminated or polluted river or near a very clean river? So we always try to foster this positive focus on land preservation and waste management. And we also worked on debunking those myths that people need to spend more money in order to do proper waste management and separation. So don't buy special bins, don't buy special containers, don't buy more bags, just label the type of waste that you're giving the waste truck or the trash truck with signs that say organic, non-organic, or recyclables, non-recyclables, so that people can tag their food, their trash bags. That's the only thing that you need to do. And as I mentioned, we visited different kinds of cities, interviewing people, and people told us we want to see within these campaigns local people that I can identify with, because many times we see campaigns pictures taken from the internet, and I don't really see myself in those people throughout the campaign. For example, if there's a campaign having a based waste manager, for example, from the city, from my locality, from my neighborhood, I can believe that everything is doing. People told us that they do not want to see people working in politics in these kinds of campaigns, because automatically these campaigns to preserve the earth, take care of the land, for example, becomes a political campaign. So they do not wish to see politicians. They want to see people they can trust, people from their neighborhood who works directly with waste, for example. In these communication campaigns, that was very important. Many times we even asked if they rather see influencers in these kinds of campaigns, and they told us actually they didn't think that they generated well, many times influencers didn't generate enough value, so they wish to see just the people that they know. So we began designing the marketing campaign for this project, and we came up with the hashtag what te clasifica sus residuos, what they classify your waste. So these something common that we saw from the Guatemalan population is that they love to classify. And I might think that a classification at the World Cup, for example, the football World Cup, could have been amazing. But of course, we are always very glad to see that we classified in the Olympics, for example. We were able to win two gold medals. So the feeling of classifying and classification actually was something that brought the Guatemalan people together. So that's why we decided to put that title in, just, teaching the community how to classify their waste, their residues. And as you can see, we have the first point of communication, what to classify your waste. We had just a regular Guatemalan citizen, somebody that people can identify with, and we are branding or labeling waste. If you can see, this is a common cardboard box. It's not a special bin. It has a label just with a pen, a marker saying recyclables, and always with the reference to the Rule of three: organic, recyclables, and non-recyclable. If people want to find out more about what to do and how to manage their waste better, they can log into www.whateclasifica.org. Always positive, always joyful. These were recommendations of the consulting agency, having environmental messages to be very positive, never punishing, never trying to threat, of course, because that generates rejection. And this is a more tropicalized message. We use Los Cruz, the Cruz family. We decided to use quite a common, for example, last name. And that was precisely the message, that they are no longer burning their waste. They are separating waste. They are recycling, they're labeling. And that is a way that we came up with to reach the population, to engage the population better. What clasifica sus residuos? Guatemala classifies residues. That means separation in Spanish. We can see that this lady has an aluminum can that she's going to be recycling and separating. The campaign in Honduras has a different name. It is called Separando Ando. I'm separating. This is because in Honduras, the people mention different kinds of things. They use this ing verb conjugation, separando, like separating, right? And we took this phrase and we adapted it into the title of our campaign, Separando Ando. I am separating to preserve our rivers in the Caribbean Sea. This is because this campaign was worked at cities that are very close to the coast, the Caribbean, the rivers, and we decided to work with this golden rule, the line rule, the three different bins: non-recyclable, organics, and recyclables. We have a very clear message: plastic bottles go to the recyclable bin. Once you separate the plastic bottles, you avoid damaging ecosystems and avoid pollution for our ecosystems. So this is the option that we gave them. We actually decided we had to interview people to see what they would rather see at a campaign, the before and after. We can actually get to this after picture when we help recycling waste. So these were part of the images that we decided to use. And local families, the Hernandez family, they are separating their waste so that they are properly classified and give the certain waste a second chance. You can contribute to the generation of new products without having to use materials from scratch. So give them a second opportunity by recycling these kinds of notebooks, for example. This is campaign in Honduras, Separando Ando. Then we also design different communication means and tools. We are going to listen to the two jingles that we designed for the campaign. We will begin by the Guatemalan jingle and then the one that we used in the project for Honduras. We don't have enough time, so we are going to be listening to What the Clasifica jingle to begin with.
Clasifica los residuos, clasifica los desechos, clasifica los residuos, clasifica los desechos. Todo el mundo, orgánicos, reciclables y también los no reciclables. Ole, ole, ole. No te clasifica, ole, ole, ole. No te clasifica, repítelo.
De verdad que esta reunión debería ser presencial y nos ponemos todos a cantar.
Actually,
ole, ole,
this
ole.
meeting should have been on site so that we can all hop out of our chairs and start dancing. What the Clasifica, we wanted to establish this engagement, the connection with the population through things that they already know. So this kind of music was totally proper, providing the messages of classification and management.
Y ahora empieza hecha hiel, separando ando orgánicos como cáscaras y restos de café. Todo lo que queda va en lo no reciclable. Es tan fácil.
estos anuncios se han publicado en redes sociales y también los hemos
These
publicitado
jingles
en
have been
radios de
published
Honduras.
on
Hemos
social media
buscado
posts
las
as well
mejores
as
estrategias que
on
tienen más
radio
audiencia
advertisement.
para llegar a la
We have
población y que se
looked
les quede el
for
mensaje de
means that
separando
have the
ando en
most
Honduras,
audience
Guate clasifica
in
en Guatemala. De
sending
la
out
misma
these
forma
jingles
también
so that
hicimos
they
anuncios
could
para redes
reach
sociales y
a
para
larger
televisión,
part of the
donde
population.
damos a
In the
conocer el
social
mensaje de
media
la separación
posts,
de
as well
residuos.
as TV
Este
and radio
mensaje que vamos a ver a
advertisement, we
continuación
disseminate the
es
message on
una
waste
versión de
separation and
separación de residuos
classification.
en la
This is a
oficina.
version
Sé
of
que les va a
waste
encantar. Vamos a
separation
ver.
at the office. I know you'll love it. Let's watch it.
Separando nuestros residuos evitamos la contaminación de ríos y mares.
Through the separation of our waste, we avoid contamination of rivers and seas. You need to separate organic waste, recyclables for everything that could be reused, and non-recyclable everything that could not be reused.
Y una vez más mantenemos las reglas de oro. Guate
And once
clasifica
again,
orgánicos,
maintaining the
reciclables y no
rules, the
reciclables.
golden
El
rules,
protagonista
separating
clasifica
into
el residuo
recyclable,
correctamente y todos celebran
non-recyclable,
la clasificación
organic, with
de
a
estos
proper
residuos, ¿verdad?
separation, and
En
everybody's
siguiente
celebrating these kinds of actions.
tenemos una versión que incorpora
The
las
next TV
recomendaciones que tuvimos de áreas
advertisement brings in
suburbanas en las cuales
different
mencionaba anteriormente que
messages that we
la
receive from the
separación de
suburban
residuos es más cerca
population,
porque no
having
quema los residuos.
waste management be burning waste, and that behavior was the one that we wanted to change.
Separando tu basura y evitando quemarla, reducimos la contaminación.
Separating your waste, avoiding burning it, actually contributes to the preservation of the planet. Separating waste and labeling it as organic, recyclable, and non-recyclable.
Entonces, para la elaboración de la campaña fuimos hilando toda la información que fuimos
To come
recolectando.
up with this project, this project, this campaign, we had to analyze a lot of the literature. As I was telling you, we got on-field analysis through interviews and tours that we did on the cities and implementing the messages. This is an advertisement for Honduras. Not everything that you throw away is trash or garbage. You can separate your waste into recyclables, non-recyclables, and organic. A few examples of recyclables are plastic bottles, glass bottles, cardboard, and cans. We take this waste into the recycling center. That is how we not only reduce solid waste, we also contribute to reduce pollution. Separate these waste and avoid it reaching our Chamalecon Ulua River as well as the Caribbean Sea. To get more information, go into separandoando.org. We also provided this message that we are trying to protect rivers and oceans because population, target population, actually lives throughout these regions. And of course, we decided to include real people operating waste at the cities. In the following advertisement, we talked about organic waste. Every day we generate a large amount of waste, and it is important that you learn how to classify them in your community. Organic waste are food that can get composted. They get decomposed by natural microbiome, and it is decomposed in a natural way. We are trying to separate waste so that we contribute to protecting our rivers and seas. Visit separandoando.org. The website separandoando.org contains a lot of information on the classification of waste and providing data to help population learn how to do so. This is part of the campaign, but of course it is complemented by a lot of activities that the authorities need to do because, of course, operation on food management is also important. It is important that we take into account integrated management. So we produce a lot of posters, for example, advertisement throughout press, media, and so that people know how to classify waste. We did a lot of posters for garbage trucks and bread collection sites. We actually also produce magnets so that people could put them on their fridge and could have a handy visual material to know how to distribute waste. We also produce a lot of promotional items, caps and reusable totes, for example, stickers to identify waste bags, and a lot of material for local visibility for these campaigns on how to manage waste in different municipalities. We've also worked with schools from elementary to high schools, educational activities where we explain the importance of separating waste into three different groups. And we have a healthy competition with the students, asking them to take recyclables to school, and that day, the classroom that actually collects the most amount of recyclables can win a prize. So you can see on the screen pictures of the campaign of the What Te Clasifica campaign from WWF, working at different schools with students, gathering, collecting recyclables, teaching them through these educational campaigns. We take the opportunity to educate them on waste separation and what happens after we give our waste to the logistics people, right? So that they can have traceability on how the value chain works. You can also see how we went about with different students. We have a card game, as you can see in the picture in the top right. And you can see also the magnets that we produced, and we have established gathering sites for recyclables, as the ones you can see here. So people can come to these sites, placing their recyclables into these bins. And we have seen quite a good engagement with the population. We've seen wide use of these kinds of bins throughout the campaign and throughout different kinds of city. Here you can see San Pedro Sula city to the collection site for recyclables, and also working at Puerto Cortes in the bottom right image. So how did we came about these campaigns? We have a communication campaign, as I showed you, via social media posts, also on public TV, public radio, and municipalities have helped us through local wires, local radio stations. We also have printed material and press releases. And as you can see, the families at the center of the slide can receive information via many means. Posters on garbage trucks, or for example, children arriving home telling their parents, guess what? Today I learned about separating waste. There is also a cell phone app that people can download to know how to go about food separation management, tips for their households, and of course, a lot of material and information that is disseminated via the waste management operators. So it's a full cycle. People can get information from massive means of communication, and then in their social media, and then with their local trash truck, for example, the garbage trucks that are going by, and everything is done jointly with the authorities. Of course, people from different levels of authority were involved to disseminate information better, to go about the radio spots, the social media spots, and authorities have actually been very supportive in all of these steps, supporting us as well, consolidating the efforts when they see that people are separating waste better. Well, they promote also continuing to do so amongst neighbors, etc. So that is something that we have had a lot of success with throughout many cities. Something I also wanted to mention is that we've also measured the scope of these campaigns, seen really positive results. We've seen people separating their waste, they're participating in the campaigns. delivering the recyclables in the specific spots. So we've seen a really positive answer. Stations where we have measured the participation of the population, it has been really good. Also, we have the goal of capacity building for everyone, showing people how to manage waste. And that was also a very important goal of this project. The first one was a course on circularity, the REP guide designed by WWF Germany. It has been made available for all audiences. It has been translated into Spanish, and we've also worked with an integral waste management system for circular economy in Mesoamerica. This is an educational project standardizing terms so that we can all speak the same language, the same technical language in Spanish speaking countries. These courses are available on site at the WWF site. These courses are free. There's a free online registration process, and once people complete these courses, they can get a diploma from the WWF. If you pass the exam, you can get a diploma saying, or a certification, because of course there's a registry of the hours that you put into the education of these topics. So you just need to have an account to register in these courses, and you could do it at the time of your most convenience. So go into www.fca.org/cursos underscore virtuales. And this is the site where you can get access to these kinds of courses for free. This is what we've worked on alongside municipalities in Guatemala and Honduras. This project has a conclusion date for January 2027. So we're still very excited to see that there has been a really positive result, a response with the population in these areas, in these cities. And all of these efforts have actually had really good answers from the population. So I will share the presentation with all of you. Whomever needs this, please contact me. Please have a great
Muchas
rest of your
gracias,
day.
Robin.
Thank you
Esperamos
very
que
much
esta
for the
experiencia sea
attention.
de mucha utilidad para las ciudades y para
Thank you
quienes
very
nos
much,
están
Robin. I
acompañando hoy.
hope that you continue to be
Con
very
gusto estaremos
successful with
compartiendo
these
los
projects.
materiales
We will gladly be
y también
sharing
aprovecho la
material
intervención para
with all
solicitar
of the
a todos, ¿verdad?, que
participants.
sigan
And also,
colocando
please,
sus
everybody,
preguntas en el chat y ahorita
continue
vamos a leer las
posting
preguntas que
your
ya están.
questions on the chat box,
Y pues
because we
también
will have
mencionarles,
space
¿verdad?, que estos
to
materiales
or time
también
to read them.
estarán disponibles en nuestra
I also wanted
biblioteca
to
para
say that
ciudades en
this
la página
material
compartida.
that
Ahorita, en este
Robin
momento
shared
les voy
with
a
us
compartir la página
is going to be
donde
shared
también pueden
on the site
acceder
that I'm going to
a
put
otros
on the chat
talleres
box.
y a otras
And you also
capacitaciones
can
que hemos
have
dado
access to other
a ciudades en
workshops
América
and
Latina.
training courses that we have worked
Y
with
ahora,
in Latin
con las
America.
lecturas
You
de
can
las
find that
preguntas
on
que
the chat
tenemos en el
box.
chat para Robin, empezamos
I'm going to be reading a
Ana
few
Cristina.
questions that I have
Ella
on
nos
the chat box for
pregunta
Robin.
cuáles
Ana Cristina,
indicadores
she
utilizarán para
asks,
medir
which
resultados de esta campaña
indicators
y
have
cada
been
cuánto
used to
medirán
measure the
impacto
results of
real.
the campaign, and how often do you measure real impact? Thank you for your question. We have a company that actually supports us on the statistics sampling. They carried out the foundation of the campaign to analyze the amounts. There was a sampling process done in October last year, and we will have a last measuring process in October this year. What we are trying to measure was the amount of information that people have on food separation and classification, and how many times do they separate their waste every month. We had a positive result of almost 45% of recyclable separation, and in Honduras we actually get the response of 80% of the population knowing how to separate their waste. So this is the statistical measurement through surveys that are done around many of the cities where these projects were implemented. And well, just the condition is that we are interviewing adults and to get to know their behavior and the amount of information that they currently have. The campaign was actually very well received in both countries that I mentioned. And we see the population are motivated because there's a lot more infrastructure now where they can actually see a reflection of their efforts being respected. We have two more questions for Robin. Freddy Gomez. Freddy Gomez, first of all, thanks Robin for his presentation. And the first question is, how do you know that the message actually reached the population, the target population, and there was a behavior change? Do you measure how behavior was changed? Precisely what we were mentioning for the previous question, the surveys actually measure different indicators. First of all, whether people recognize the campaign, whether they have the information at hand, whether they know what we are talking about, and that's how we measure whether they've received the material or the spots. And then we also ask questions. For example, do you separate waste? Who is in charge at home of waste separation? Many times we saw that the answer was the moms. However, we've seen a lot more answers to other members of the family being responsible for food separation and classification. Not or in offices, for example, it was about the janitor separating waste, but now a lot of the administrative employees, for example, are now taking on those tasks themselves as well. Separating plastic bottles, separating glass bottles, that's also something that we're measuring in order to know how much of the information that we are trying to disseminate is put into practice in real time. And in Guatemala, there was a big event on waste classification. And are these results, for example, measuring which behavioral changes come from which campaigns? Because, of course, there have been many events in Guatemala about this topic. Well, the largest campaign actually was ours, and there was a lot of alignment disseminating this information on food class and waste classification. And of course, a lot of these campaigns work towards the same targets. However, other campaigns were pretty short and they were smaller in scale. The only one that has been constant, the only one that has the largest scope and impact is the What Te Clasifica project. So yeah, we can honestly say that the most significant change has came about through our campaigns. We have another question. How much did it take you to prepare the campaign from the initial analysis and research? I would say that the most appropriate response or answer for this question was 1 year, because we began with months of literature research to finding out which were the current laws, regulation, disposal, for example, for managing waste, municipal guidelines, etc. We also had to do an analysis of the current state, looking at news. We toured around cities. We toured for a couple of weeks actually, coming from Guatemala and finishing at El Progreso, analyzing the response as well of all of the people working or participating at focus groups on interviews. We carried out focus groups to understand current behaviors, what was going on at the time. And after that, we were able to process all of those pieces of data and information. And we ran tests with specific agencies to see whether the population was receiving indeed the messages that we were trying to disseminate. In order to avoid false dichotomy, we also ran a few more analysis, and that was done through many months. And after that, we toured the cities again to see how the campaign was installed. It was a lot of recording, a lot of production for both of the campaigns in the two countries. So it was very intense work that was carried out throughout approximately 1 year. Okay, we have a lot more questions, but we have very little time. So we're just going to read one more, and then the other ones will be answering them through email or via email. It is asks whether these projects will be extended into other areas in Honduras. She is a university student, and she is very excited about these kinds of campaigns. Well, we have been in touch with Cerna. They have actually helped us a lot with information dissemination. And well, our project now have a target of 4 cities in Guatemala and Honduras. We are, however, open about working with other cities in this campaign. However, this project was initially designed for Choloma, Puerto Sula, Puerto Cortes, and El Progreso. I can give you an example of what happened in Guatemala. More municipalities adapted the campaign for the region. The municipalities for Catepeques, for example, Antigua Guatemala have also their own campaign for waste classification, and the same thing could be done for Honduras City. We have been working hand in hand with Serna so that we can expand this project into many more cities and municipalities and implementing waste management logistics first in a more efficient way. So this will have, according to us, a very positive impact. And once the authorities implement better logistics for food waste management, we could disseminate information and educational campaigns much better. Thank you very much. Willy Culodro is here from WWF Chile. He is in charge of climate change at WWF in Chile, and Carolina, she is communications officer. They will be presenting policy instruments and regulatory frameworks applied to two pillars of the urban agenda, sustainable mobility and the institutionalization of programs against food waste. Go ahead, Uri Carolina. Hello, let me share my screen, please.
Bueno, ¿me confirma si es que se ve bien?
Ya la vemos.
Can you confirm whether you can see my screen correctly? All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carolina Aranda. I work at WWF Chile, and today, with our colleague Uri Colodro, we'll be presenting change of behavior campaigns for climate change. And this is all within the framework for climate change of WWF. Our agenda for this presentation. Why is it important to communicate from alliances, also awareness campaigns against food waste, two campaigns that we did or carried out last year, also our participation in different festivals, and a campaign that is related to mobility, move around without a car. And we'll also talk about the lessons learned of these strategies. Why is it significant to carry out communication from a place of an alliance? We know that through alliances with different kinds of startups, in our case, and innovative projects, we can reach a wider population. And also, we are able to simplify messages, to transform very complex problems into very simple and specific actions. And in this way, generate a wider impact. The campaigns that I'm going to be talking about are about, of course, cultural change and behavioral strategies. The target of these campaigns against food waste is to raise awareness on food waste as a climate, social, and environmental problem, to strengthen alliances with innovative startups to rescue food. I'm going to tell you what rescuing food means, and also to position messages on sustainability. The first campaign was a campaign that we called Until the Last Crumb. We designed this together with Chief, this Mexican startup operating in Chile, Argentina, Mexico, of course. And this is a mobile app through which people can connect to supermarkets, restaurants, bakeries, and they can have access to food at a very affordable price with up to 70% discount, given that these products are near their expiration date, or perhaps perhaps for fruits and vegetables, they don't look perfect, and people usually discard them or dispose of them. So what this application does is that they connect supermarkets and restaurants to part of the population that can rescue these kinds of products and actually having them or go to pick them up that very same day and using them that very same day. And the target population of this campaign is an urban population sector. And perhaps this is a target population that have a mid to high income and also a lot of young people. The purpose of using these apps is also because there's wider, broader dissemination through social media, through Instagram. We focused on this platform. And you can see here pictures, material that we used to teach users about these impactful facts. For example, in Chile, 5.2 million tons of food every year is wasted. 120, for example, all of the extension of the country is wasted every year on waste. The campaign up to the last crumb had the purpose of educating population on separation. We had already participated at a podcast on educating population on food waste. And of course, this actually magnified the scope of our campaign. We're able to reach so much more people. And another axis of this very important vein or axis of this campaign was done through Chief carrying out surveys on food waste and food waste management. That was in order to look at the current state last year. Using this expert agency, Uri Colodro actually was very involved in this project, and thanks to the information that we received through this campaign, we had a broader scope on national media and, of course, on a regional scope as well.
Bueno, la segunda campaña que realizamos fue junto a nuestros partners de Good Meal.
The second campaign we came about was done in conjunction with Good Meal, our friends at Good Meal. This is a Chilean NGO that works in Chile, most recently in Colombia as well. And different from Chief, Good Meal works with smaller kinds of commerces and businesses, bakeries, small restaurants, and our main means of communication was social media. We decided to do posts in a very creative way. So we produced reels, posts with a much more creative focus, much more of a daily life thing. And we produced content that could be much more attractive for a younger population. Also, on the National or International Awareness Day on Food Loss, we carried out a masterclass cooking without any waste. Antojista, he is a widely known platform which actually helped us organize this project, this open class, which had the purpose of showing and educating the people on the fact that we could use very simple ingredients to produce very delicious food, actually, and actually taking care of waste. And the purpose of this was to generate a recipe book with a lot of recipes that reduced food waste. We shared this via mailing lists and our social media platforms, offering the audience these healthy options and zero waste recipes so that they could also contribute to the fight against climate change.
Finalmente, nosotros creemos que es súper importante también estar presente de manera presencial.
We believe it's also very important to hold projects on site, not only via social media. And these on-site projects and events helped us to know the scope that we were truly having. One of the most important festivals that we participated in was the Ladera Sur Fest, the biggest one in Latin America, and of course in Chile. Closing the campaign that we ran all through 2025. This was carried out in November 2025. And we participated through different activations. First of all, conversation with festival attendees with the title "To the Rescue: Food in Helping the Planet." Chief, Good Meal, and WWF Chile participated in this campaign, in this conversation, where we discussed the essential role of food waste and on climate change and how we could counteract it. So it was very effective. The festival lasted 3 days, and we were able to be present there via a stand, as you can see in the picture on the right of the slide, and together with our friends with our chief and at Good Meal, we did a lot of activities. We wanted to know how much people knew about food classification and waste classification. People usually say, yes, I know that it can be separated into this and that and that, but they're not really sure why. Why is it important? Because we generate greenhouse effect gases, etc. Right? So we wanted to see how much people knew, why it had to happen, why was it important, how we could do it. And that's why we decided that our active participation was really important. We also attended Lollapalooza. We went to Gourmet Fair, for example, as well. And we use all of these platforms to provide educational material and information to the population. And I'll pass the microphone to Uri now so that he can tell us about the campaign Move Around Without a Car. As part of the campaigns for behavioral change in different cities, we designed different campaigns to reduce climate change effects. One of them, as we've already heard from Carolina, was about food waste classification. But we also wanted to work on sustainable activities to protect climate change. And that also has to do with sustainable urban mobility. Us at Chile are known for being quite an urbanized country. So 30% of our population live in the capital city, and near 70% is distributed around other large cities. So there's a lot of urban problems that we need to attend to and solve. One of these issues precisely has to do with urban mobility, which is in general not very sustainable, in spite of the fact that we've seen a lot of efforts throughout the last few years to move forward protecting climate change. For example, a lot of the problems that are still found in capital city Santiago. For example, there are a lot of campaigns to use public transportation, better spaces for cyclists, more spaces for pedestrians. However, we still see great dependency on private vehicles. Now, also throughout the last 20, 30 years, there has been great economic growth in the country. This means that a lot of people have been able to afford private vehicles, increasing, of course, the vehicle fleet throughout our cities. So, under this context, I wanted to set the campaign that we carried about in Chile called Move Around Without a Car, to think about well being, to think about protecting our planet, but also fostering social justice. Very similar to what Carolina mentioned for the other campaign. This campaign is focused on changing the behavior, and we wanted to have pedestrians be the focus, the central characters in the city, not vehicles, and also getting the population to know about other means of transportation. There's a lot of health benefits, for example, walking, using bicycles to move around in the city, not only on a physical level, but also on a mental and psychological level, walking around cities and also getting them to know that being stuck in traffic inside a vehicle can actually affect your nervous system, and rather than walking around the city could actually be something beneficial for you. So this was about raising awareness on all of these means of transportation that could be used other than private vehicles. And all of that was done with the help of municipalities. And This was, of course, as I mentioned, a campaign to promote transportation via other means that are not private vehicle per se. You can see the picture of the launch of that campaign. Valdivia, to give you a bit of context, is a southern city very near the Patagonia. It is actually known as a river city, the greatest river city in Chile, because it is surrounded by a lot of rivers that could hold vessels. And of course, there's a lot of real cultural, important cultural environment. It's a university city. It has a very particular weather, tempered weather, rainy, surrounded by forests. The Eco-Valdivian jungle, for example, and forest and rainforest is a very significant one. It's a very beloved city, we can say. It's one of the most beautiful cities in Chile, and it has a lot of nicknames. The Pearl of the South, for example, and it's very touristic. It's intermediate size, we can say, and it was the perfect ground to work with these kinds of campaigns and see the impact that we can generate within the population. The citizens, the population is actually well organized in this city. Actually, our headquarters at WWF Chile are based at Valdivia. We wanted to see how we could connect to the population and also connecting to other organizations that help us amplify this message. Let me show you the social media advertisement spots. Choose to move around in a sustainable way around Valdivia and discover other means of transportation's benefits. Begin your day on a bike, experiences the freedom of moving around the city while you would take care of the environment as well as your own health.
Luego, da un paso a la dirección correcta. Caminar
Take a step in the right route. Walking around is a way to connect to the city and reduce your carbon footprint. And don't forget about the rivers. River transportation can provide you with a unique experience in a sustainable way, reducing congestion, traffic, and pollution.
Finalmente, autobuses y colectivos se convierten
Finally, buses and public transportation can be your greatest ally to move around the city. Every choice you make contributes to having a greener and more sustainable Valdivia with clean air and ensuring a better future for everyone. Join this campaign and move around without a vehicle. This is a project promoted by WWF and Valdivia authorities.
Bueno, ahí como pudieron ver, están todas esas organizaciones que conforman la
As you
mesa de
can see,
movilidad
all
de
of these
Valdivia, que es un
organizations
movimiento
are the Mobility
impulsado desde la
Council
municipalidad,
for
pero que también es muy
Valdivia. This
interesante
is a
porque nos permite
project
conectar con
promoted
muchas
by the
organizaciones que están
municipality, but
promoviendo
it has been great
justamente
because it
la
allowed
movilidad
us
urbana
to
desde
connect
distintas
to
áreas
other
sociales, por
organizations
ejemplo,
promoting urban
de
mobility
peatones,
from
de
different
automóviles, acá
focuses,
incluso algunos gremios
cyclists,
como los
pedestrians, certain
buses,
groups, for example,
camiones,
that
etcétera.
work
Entonces,
around
es
in
un
buses,
abordazo también muy
trucks. So it
interesante
is
con quienes también
quite an
hemos podido
interesting
dialogar bastante y
governance
poder trabajar
project
para poder
because
impulsar
we
este
were
tipo de
able to
campañas.
work
La
as
siguiente,
a
por favor.
whole team to promote these kinds of campaigns.
Entonces, bueno, ¿qué hace replicable este tipo de
What
campañas?
makes
Primero que
these
responden
kinds
a
of
dinámicas
campaigns
urbanas
replicable?
comunes, si
They
bien obviamente hay
answer
que
to
adaptarlas a la
curb
realidad de
common
cada ciudad, de
urban
cada país. No
dynamics.
es lo
Of
mismo
course,
hacer
we
una
need to
campaña en
adapt
Valdivia,
them to the
Valdivia que hacerla
reality
en
and the current
Santiago o
state
en
of each
Valparaíso, quizás
city,
en
of
otro
course.
país de la región.
But it
Sin
can
embargo, en
they
general las dinámicas
answer
urbanas
to
son similares.
general
Tenemos problemas que son
problems, which are
similares.
very
Tenemos un
similar throughout
exceso de
different
flota
cities,
vehicular, un exceso de
similar
personas
problems,
moviéndose en
just
auto,
like an excess
para
of
viajes en los cuales
vehicle
quizás
fleet,
es
an excess of
prescindible el uso
people
del
moving around
automóvil y
in
podrían
private
hacerse
car,
en
a lot
transporte
of people who
público, en
think that they can
bicicleta o
only move
caminando.
around in cars
Se
when they
construyen
could be
desde
using
alianzas estratégicas locales y
bicycles or public
estratégicas tanto para
transportation
el
or
tema
walking. They
de
are
Muévete
built,
sin
these
auto
kinds of
como para
campaigns
las
are built
campañas de
on
alimentación sostenible.
local
Trabajamos con
strategic
distintos actores, en este
alliances.
caso
So
con
we
una
work with different
municipalidad, el otro
stakeholders, in this case with the municipality, with different startups, with different NGOs and organizations, always with a focus on the positive. They are oriented on identifying a problem and bringing in positive solutions. These help to inspire the population, to give them practical advice and actionable items to improve these problems, and we can move forward with the changes this way. Many times we can propose many kinds of things and can actually sound a bit utopical. So it's also good to try to land all of these messages on actionable items that can really make a difference. We have a hashtag, move around with car. But if somebody tells you, yes, but you know what? My house and my place of work are 2 hours apart. So, of course, there's a cultural resistance and a logic behind the fact that people need to use the car. So, we always try to land these messages saying, you know, people who can do so, use your bicycles. People who can have these kinds of routes, use public transportation. You know, 5 kilometers distance from your house to your place of work is an ideal distance to use a bike, for example. But of course, saying people who can do so. We know that there's people who use wheelchairs, etc. There's bad weather. So always landing these messages with the possibilities of each sector of the population, saying if it is in your possibilities, do so. And we have been using a lot of activation points in throughout the cities. They have a lot of campaigns and sites, activation sites throughout the daily tour, the daily corridors of people. And of course, the holidays have been used as also days to establish a campaign, for example, the International Day to not use a car, or the International Day to reduce food waste. You know, we always try to use these kinds of holidays and important dates to activate an interesting campaign. For example, the food waste campaign was done in the International Day for Food Waste. So that is how we try to activate these campaigns, not just something that's done once and not really bringing it into the larger and most comprehensive side of the work that many of us organizations have been doing. Thank you very much, Uri, for the presentation. If somebody wishes to ask questions, you can raise your hand or put your question on the chat box.
Adelante, Freddy.
Yes, go ahead, Freddy.
Gracias, buenos días. Saludos desde Guatemala.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Greetings from Guatemala.
Sobre la aplicación.
I had a question about the app that you mentioned. I wanted to know whether, in the case of Chile, you measure users, volume of food that it was rescued, and could we use these figures on different kinds of projects and interventions? And I had another question. Just a second, I wrote it down. Oh, yes. Do you know whether the app has kind of a backup for reinforcing the behavioral change, whether it has little games or rewards or gifts or something else? Thank you. Uri, do you want to answer? Yeah, I have an answer for the first part of the question. Yes, apps have very clear metrics. Actually, that's part of their business model, being able to measure and analyze how much food or the amount of food that it was rescued. And it also interprets that information into the actual carbon footprint that was reduced. The app actually uses your location to identify which business you can go to rescue food. And if, for example, you walk to said business, it actually gives you an amount of carbon dioxide, for example, that you saved the planet, etc. So it is part of a report
Y en relación
on
a los
metrics
incentivos,
that
sí,
we always can
cuenta con
see with the app.
incentivos.
And with regards to
No
the
recuerdo
incentives for
específicamente
behavioral change,
para cuál
yes,
aplicación, pero
I
por
don't
ejemplo
remember
hay
which
alcantarillas.
application,
Tú
but
puedes
for
juntar
example, in
puntos y
one of
después
them, I
puedes ir
know
canjeando
that
comida
you can
directamente. Y
gather an
también hay
amount of
otros concursos que
points
están
that
asociados
you
con las
can
redes
later
sociales.
exchange for
Entonces, por
products,
ejemplo,
a lot of
usualmente
dynamics
hacen
and
ranking las personas que
contests
más
on
rescataron
social
durante el
media,
mes, y a esa
ranking of the
persona le
people
regalan
who
unas
was
listas para
able
que
to
pueda
rescue the most
seguir
amount of
rescatando
food,
comida.
for
Entonces,
example, throughout
variados
one
tipos
month.
como
And there's a
de
lot of
incentivos para que la gente
incentives or
siga
different
utilizando y
kinds of
rescatando
incentives
comida.
so that people can continue
Muchas gracias.
to
Seguimos
use
con
the
la pregunta
apps
de Karen
and
Valenzuela.
just stay aligned with the project.
¿Me escuchan bien?
Karen, you can
Hola a
go
todos,
ahead
hola
with your
Carolina
question.
y hola
Hello,
Uri de la
everyone. Hello,
Municipalidad de San
Carolina.
Antonio
Hello, Uri from the municipality of
de
San
la región de
Antonio
Valparaíso,
in
Chile.
the region of Valparaíso,
Les quería
Chile.
preguntar si ustedes, bueno, yo soy usuaria de Chief y de Good Meal
I
en la
am a
aplicación,
user
pero
at
me he dado
Chief
cuenta que la
and Good Meal
aplicación
as well.
es
I
solo para
use the apps,
Santiago.
but
Ustedes
I've seen
saben,
that the app
si
only
bien
works
esta es
in
una
Santiago de
startup,
Chile. Do
obviamente,
you
no
know
sé si ustedes
whether
saben si esto está
we can
pensado,
have these
tienen pensado llegar
apps
a regiones con esta
active
aplicación.
soon throughout different
Sí, de hecho,
regions? I know
operan
that they
regiones,
are a
operan en todo
startup,
Chile,
but
ambas.
are
El
we
problema es que
expecting
muchas veces no
the
tienen
app
comercios
for
asociados.
more
Y
expanded
ahí son
use?
los comercios, bueno, ellos
Yes,
hacen
of
un
course, they're a
trabajo ahí
startup, but they have
comercial de ir
plans to
buscando comercio, pero
expand. And
después
of
son los
course,
comercios
there's
los
a
que tienen
lot
que
of
tocar un
talks
poco la
about
puerta,
uh,
escribirle, decirle, hola, yo quiero
expanding the
sumarme
activity
a
with
tu
a lot
carnet
of
de alimentos,
businesses. But it's
etcétera.
also
Y
about
ahí, bueno, les explicarán cómo
passing this
funciona,
message to
cómo es la
different
dinámica, las
businesses and
comisiones,
saying, you know
etcétera,
what,
etcétera.
you can
Pero sí, de hecho,
register
esta pregunta nos la
into
hicieron en uno de los
these
conversatorios que
apps that
tuvimos
can
con ellos.
actually help
Y
you
claro, la gente
manage
se quejaba
your
mucho
food
de que
waste
funcionaba muy
to
bien en
get
Santiago,
money
pero
back,
muchas veces
etc.
no había, que
And
decía,
yes,
sí
we've
hay, y
heard
lo que
that
más
comments
queremos es
that the apps
expandirnos a
work very well
regiones.
in
Que
Santiago,
parece que es
but
un tema
however,
más de
there's no
motivación
activity
del
in other
comercio local.
places. So yes, I
Ya,
think that they are
bueno,
going to
vamos
have
a ver si
much more
algo, algo se puede
participation
hacer acá en
as
San
time
Antonio,
goes by.
porque al menos en
Yeah, let's
Santiago
see
sí
whether we can
funciona
do
súper bien.
something at
Y
San
la otra
Antonio because
consulta
yes, I've
tiene que
used it
ver
in
con la
Santiago and it
campaña
works
Muévete sin
really, really
auto.
well.
Bueno,
My
nosotros
other
acá
question
estamos
has to
en
do with
realidad
the campaign Move Around Without
somos bien
Car.
incipientes en este tema,
So
pero estamos
here
tratando
we
de
have
ver
been working really
cómo
hard with
podríamos
these
avanzar
kinds
en
of
la
messages.
ecomovilidad.
However,
Entonces
we've
les quería
seen
preguntar,
how
bueno,
we
sería
are trying to
ideal
see how
si se puede extender la
we can
campaña, pero al
continue
menos si no se
working
puede hacer
with
eso,
urban
a lo
mobility
mejor las
here.
gráficas
I wanted to ask you
son
whether your
quizás que son más
campaigns
genéricas, a
can
lo
be
mejor si las
expanded
pueden
for other
enviar a
cities,
otras
or
comunas
if
para
you
poder
have more
replicarlas acá.
generical
O
materials
sea,
so
me
that we
imagino
can
que a lo
replicate it
mejor se
here.
pueden modificar quizás
I
y
imagine that
utilizar eso
perhaps
para
we could
incentivar
modify your materials and use them
tanto la
to
movilización
promote
sin electromóvil o bien caminar.
mobilization
No sé
that
si es posible
doesn't
que nos puedan
use
compartir esa
fossil
información.
fuels
Sí, en
and
general
move
están como súper
towards a more
enfocadas a Valdivia y es como muy
eco-mobile city.
Valdivia céntrico, honestamente.
Yes,
Entonces,
the
no sé
materials
qué
that
mucha
we use are
adaptación se puede
honestly
hacer de ese
very much
material.
centered
Sin
on
embargo, igual
Valdivia.
conversemos y veamos qué podemos
Perhaps we
hacer
cannot
porque
share it
nosotros siempre
as it
estamos
is
como
right now,
felices
but let's
de
chat about what
replicar
we
los
can do. We're
distintos proyectos que
always
hemos
very
hecho.
glad to
Lamentablemente
replicate
en este
different kinds
momento
of
no tenemos
projects that
como
we have.
recursos específicos para
Fortunately, we
poder
don't have
hacer otra
specific
campaña.
resources to
En este
carry out
caso, al tiro
another
contamos con el
campaign.
apoyo de un
In the one
donante
in
que
Valdivia,
financió,
we have the
digamos, todo esto.
support
Por
of a
eso teníamos más
donor
recursos para
who
poder hacerlo.
financed,
Sin
economically
embargo, siempre,
financed
a
all
pesar
of
de no tener
these
recursos,
sites.
vemos ahí qué
However, we
sinergias se
always
pueden
say that in
hacer,
spite of
qué
not
cosas
having resources, we
se
can
pueden seguir
always see
haciendo
what we can share,
sin mucho esfuerzo por
perhaps
medio.
without
Así que
having to use a
conversemos
lot of budget. So yeah, let's
Ya,
chat
pero
and see what
bueno,
we can
quizás
do
las
to share the
gráficas,
material.
ahí algo se
Yeah,
puede
well,
hacer.
perhaps the
Ya, muchas
graphs,
gracias.
we can use them,
Súper.
you know? Yes, great.
Gracias,
Thank you
Karen.
very
Por
much.
último, tenemos
Thank you,
una pregunta de
Karen.
Ana
And
Cristina. No
last,
sé
we
si
have a
quisiera
question by
hacerla
Ana
de
Cristina.
forma pública
Ana
o finalmente
Cristina,
la
do
puedo
you
leer.
want to participate or do you want me to read
Listo,
it?
la leo. Dice,
Yeah,
sumado
okay,
el
I'll read
interés
it
de
out
nuevas
loud.
formas de movilidad,
Added to the
se
interest
están
of new
creando
ways of
nuevos espacios
mobility,
públicos para
new
incentivar
public
también
spaces
caminar o
are
bicicleta
new
en
public
espacios seguros.
spaces being
Súper buena pregunta
created
porque de
or
hecho cierra
being
un
built
poco algo
so
que no
that
mencioné
people can
antes,
move around
como esto
walking
en el caso de
and
Valdivia,
using the
voy a
bicycle
enfocarme
in a safe way?
específicamente en esta
Oh,
campaña,
yes, I
pero en
didn't
el
mention
caso de
that before. Let me
Valdivia el
focus specifically
proyecto
in the case
obviamente
of of Valdivia. The project was an initiative coming from the municipality and of course including many different kinds of actions. It is more than a communication campaign. So different kinds of components have to do with mobility, with the housing ministry, public transportation, bridges and roads. There are a lot of departments that have committed to working alongside us in these kinds of projects. So we have worked with authorities to build new cycling roads, for example, and to expand sidewalks. Sidewalks were also a very important project for downtown Valdivia. We also donated 6 stations to repair bicycles throughout the city in order to promote bicycling or cycling usage. So, yes, of course, this was all part of something greater than the campaign, including joint work with authorities to introduce safe spaces and safe tools to promote urban mobility in this way. Thank you very much, Carolina. Thank you very much, Uri. We have reached the end of our webinar. Thank you very much for your presentation. We will be sharing all of the material that we saw today to all participants, and we'll leave a few links and tools on the chat box so that you can get access to much more information, webinars, workshops that we have used in the region. Thank you, everyone who was here. Thank you to all cities in Latin America and cities around the world. We also had participations from other countries in the world. So thank you so much for participating. We expect to have had a lot of success with positive messages. Thank you all so much. Have a good rest of your day or night. Thank you, Irene. Thank you.